Recently, someone over on my Discord asked if it was possible to make something like this without using any JavaScript at all, and well, it sure is, so today we're going to be looking at how we can do that. Hi there, my front-end friends. Thank you so much for coming to join me once again. And if you're new here, my name is Kevin, and here at my channel, it's all about learning how we can fall in love with CSS. And I think one way to do that is to have some fun with it, which is exactly what we're going to be doing today. So in this video, what we're going to be doing is taking a look at the tilting effect and not the spinning effect, because I have looked at that spinning thing before, but we've never seen the tilting. So we're going to be diving into how we can get that to work with just a bit of CSS. It's going to be a nice exploration of different types of selectors we can do, how grid and position absolute work really well together, and a bunch of really just cool things that I think you can do with CSS. There are JavaScript libraries that can enable things like this, and the CSS solution does have a few drawbacks with it, but it is a really fun exercise in learning about sort of advanced selectors and some of the just fun sort of maybe hacky things you can do with CSS. So let's dive in, and I'm starting with basically nothing. I'm just going to be using a bit of a shadow here that I've saved or set up as a custom property, and I've just set my body to center our content on the screen. And so the first thing we need to do is let's just come in here with a div, and I'm going to call it a tilting card wrapper. And there is a little bit of a drawback in how we need this to actually work, in that the first thing we need in here is going to be something that's going to keep track of our mouse position. So we're going to do, let's just do mouse position tracker, and I'm going to do star, we want 9. Now you could do more of these to get more precise sort of movements and stuff, and I'll explore that in a little bit too. But we'll do 9 because it's enough to get what we need for now. And I am using Emmet now, so star 9, hit tab, and then there we go. We have 9 of those divs like that. And this is one of the annoying things with the CSS solution right now, in that we need to have these before we have the actual content of what's going to be in our card. We can fix that with the has selector that doesn't have perfect support yet, but support for it's coming. And so at the end of this video, we'll look at how has actually simplifies this like a million times and why it's going to be really, really awesome. But for now, we're going to come here and let's do a tilting card body, so, or content, whatever you want. We'll do content, I guess, content itself. So we have the tracker, and then here's like where the actual content is going to come. And this is a bit where has can help us clean things up here a little bit, but for now it's fine. It's not that bad. For the time being, I'm just going to throw h1 in here saying tilting card. Let's just say with CSS only. Perfect. And as I said, it's centered on the screen right now just because we have this going on right here. Now I'm going to keep the styles for the tilting card at the top and just this general styling at the bottom. So let's come and we'll start with actually not touching our wrapper for the moment. Let's make the card, like this is what we really want to style and what we want it to look like what we have. And we're using all that other stuff to do sort of the magic of having it move around. So let's come here and let's start that. So tilting card content. And let's just throw a display grid on there really fast. Whoops. We can then do the place items or place content center, which is getting there. We'll do a text align center too, text align of center. Cool. And let's add my box shadow so we can actually see it. Box shadow, and we can just do my var box shadow. And especially with more complex shadows like this one, it's nice being able to just come in with that, which isn't working right now because I just called it shadow and not box shadow. There we go. So we can actually see it a little bit, and I think a little bit of padding on that might also go a long way. So we'll just do 2 rem for now. Now, where the real magic sort of happens is what we're going to do is let's come and we'll put it at the top, which is going to be our tilting card wrapper. And I made a typo there, so let's fix that before we run into any trouble. Except I made the same typo here when I did it. Look at that. It would have worked anyway. Tilting. Okay, so we fixed both of those. And for now, let's just put I'm trying to think the best way to illustrate how this is working. So we'll just do a border for now. Border of 3 pixels solid. And we'll go with lime just to have something on there that we can see. Perfect. And let's also add padding here, because it's just going to help illustrate how this is working by doing this. And actually, we might keep this padding, but not the one on the shadowy card. But we'll set it up like this for the moment. And one thing we're definitely going to need on here, because of the way our trackers are going to work, is going to be here. We're going to do a position of relative because we're going to be using we're going to be using position absolute on the mouse position trackers here. And this is one of the fun things, actually. I'm setting the mouse position trackers up. So let's come there, mouse position tracker. And basically we need something, it's all going to work with hover. And so to be able to work with hover, we need to sort of spread these out in a grid across all of here. And there's a few different ways we can do this. So let's do a mouse position tracker, position of absolute. And I just thought of a different way we can do this because of how well I had a different plan, and we're going to try something different now. But we're going to try this, and we're going to display grid. Always good to grid template columns. We're going to do repeat of 3, 1 FR, and then we're going to do a grid template rows, not columns again, rows of the same thing. And if I set that up properly, it's going to break things a little bit right now, but there we go. Okay, perfect. And let's go into our dev tools just so we can actually see this and turn on the grid, not that grid, turn on this grid. And there you go. You can see that it's created all of these things here, which is exactly what I want. Now, because I used 1FR, they're sort of based on the size of this one here. So let's go on my card content, and we're going to come, yeah, I usually do it like this. So we're going to say grid column, and it's going to be a 1 over -1, and then we're going to do a grid row of 1 over -1. And what the -1 does is it just means go to like the far end the other way. So you can see we've created this like 3 by 3 grid on top of my card. Well, my card is actually covering the entire grid, so it goes from one side to the other, and we have these equally spaced out things right there. Perfect. And the reason why this is kind of cool is because then we can use the content itself to sort of set things up. So I have my padding on there. Let's also, and the grid is really like on top of that. So that spacing here is not a big issue with the outline that I thought it would be. Because yeah, we're gonna have to play around with stuff that we don't have to do now. And say I come here and I say aspect ratio on the card itself. Let's do a 1/2. And that should make it a bit taller. So we get, you can play with your shape based on aspect ratio instead of setting a specific height or something like that, which can be kind of cool. Awesome. So yeah, that's off to a good start, and it's kind of nice to visualize our grid that way. So now we have my mouse position tracker, and let's make these so they're visible. So let's just do background on these is going to be a blue, and we'll just say the opacity is 0.2. And let's see where they actually are on our grid, which I don't see at all right now. And let's also throw an inset here, inset of 0. And just see if that changes anything. Aha, there it is. Okay, so let's turn off the padding here. No, not the padding there. Let's turn off the padding on the wrapper itself. We're gonna get rid of that just so this is really matching our grid exactly how we had it before. Now the issue with this, not the aspect ratio, the issue right now is I've done an inset of 0. And that, well, it's not an issue. It just means it's covering the entire grid. Now, even if we were doing this without grid, we'd need a way to sort of set these all up with positioning. And before I was doing like a top, you just play with your top values like left 0.33.3333 type of thing. But we're going to do something similar here. So this is a fun exercise in combinators, the nth of type combinators. So for now, I want to select my first 3. Or actually, let's do the easier ones first. Let's select the first, the third, and the first, the fourth, and the 7th one. So to do that, we can say that we want my mouse position tracker, and we want nth, and I want to get, let's just do 3n actually for now, because it'd be every third one, but it's not what we want. So if I do 3n, and let's give that a background of red, just so it changes color. Not nth, Kevin, nth of type. That would help, or nth child would also work. So you can see actually it's mixing with the blue, so we have a purple now. So what we're going to say here is grid column is going to be my 2 over, we're going to say, we've selected the ones that we want all the way on this side. So let's just say, we'll start there. We're going to say 3 over 4. And again, you can see sort of the line numbers here. So it's 3 over 4. So they're set up on the side over here right now, if this is working. And I don't want auto columns. I want grid column. Grid column. There we go. That should actually, there we go. Perfect. So let's set all of those up on that side. So let's copy this and let's put a comment here saying this is my 3rd, 6th, and 9th that we've selected with that one. And let's copy that. And now we want to select the same, we want to select like not the 3rd, the 6th, the 9th, we want a -1. We want the 2nd, the 5th, and the 2nd, 5th, and 8th. My math skills here, I can't subtract 1. So to do that, well, we want to subtract 1, so you just do -1. And that should set them up. So now I actually want this to be a 2/3, and let's just make this green so we can see the color is different. Perfect. And then, as you might have guessed, let's select that one, come here, we can say 1st, 4th, and 7th, and now we want to go one more back, so we just do a -2. And let's change this to yellow, just so we can see that it is working. And of course, change this to a 1/2. And there we go. So we get our 3 stripes going this way. Now the problem is they're going the whole length down. We want it to take up 1 grid cell only. And this is really where the nth child stuff, you can do some interesting ones. So now what I want to do is I want to select the 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd only. So let's just paste our comment in. So we want my 1st, 2nd, and 3rd one. And we want them to have like we want to set them all up for the same grid row. And actually, no, we can skip that one now that I think of it, just because it's by default, the first ones are at the top anyway. So let's go with the 4, 2, 6, 4, 5, 6, yeah. So what we can do to do that is you can select ranges with nth of type, which is really cool, or nth child. And since nth child's a little bit shorter and it will be easier to keep it on the screen, let's use that child. So you can use just n, and n is going to select every one, or I can say n+1. So let's do n+1. Background is purple, and I'll just throw an important even though I don't think we need it. So everyone other n+2. Yeah, so we're selecting like all of them other than the first one right now, and the second one. It's hard to tell just because of how they're overlapping. But what we want to say is my n+3. So we're going to select, like, we're starting at 1, 2, 3. Silly me, we just want to do an n+4. So we're starting at the 4th one. So we're selecting the 4th one all the way forwards from there until the end. But then you can also come here and do an nth child of -n. So -n will count backwards. And so that one will be +6 because we want to select up to the 6th one. And now let's come here and say grid row is going to be 2. So that should make everything there. You can see this is lightened up because what we've done is we've moved these ones to be only selecting this area here. And we'll do row 2/3, and actually that should make the bottom darker too. So now these ones are only lining up here. They're a bit darker because they're actually overlapping some of the other stuff. If you want a calculator, generate whatever, something that explains this in detail, I've put a link in the description. It's called nth-master. Really, really cool thing on selecting ranges and doing other things with nth child. And again, these could be nth child too. Nth of type, nth child for this would have the same result. So let's copy this one, and then we want to select my 7 through 9. So same idea, we can choose my 7 here and just change this over to a 9, and then change the grid rows here from, we'll do 3/4. And actually I said we didn't need the first one, but we do need the first ones. So here we can say 1 through 3. And we'll just do a 1/2 because what was happening is those ones were actually spanning the entire thing. So now I'm saying, only live within your actual area. So yeah, that should be working now. And so now we have an individual, like we have one here, here. Each one of these cells has its own little thing. And that's kind of cool because with grid, you can get positioning working with grid, which is kind of handy. With positioning, if you're doing it without grid and using position absolute, you'd use the exact same selectors, but instead of using grid columns and grid rows to set it up, you're just using your top, your bottom, your left, your right, and percentages and stuff like that to get things to be exactly where you need them to be. But I think this works well, so we're going to stick with that. And now we need to do one more thing. Oh, this should be 7. And now we actually need it to react to when we hover on top of stuff. So what we'll do is let's turn off these background colors, but I am going to put on all of them. Let's just put a border or outline of 3 pixels solid. Let's go with something we'll be able to see easily, purple. And there we go. We get my grid, and I have a red background still to turn off. So you can see we have my grid coming up, and we want to be able to interact with that grid now and have that interaction affect the positioning and movement of the card underneath it. So to do this, I'm going to use a healthy dose of custom properties because it's the easiest way to do it. So on my content itself, what I'm going to do is come up to the top, and we're going to create a few custom properties. We're going to put a perspective. This one doesn't have to be, but it does make life easier. So we're going to have a perspective. Then we're going to have rotation X, a rotation on Y, and that's, I think, all we need actually. And then if you wanted to do something with Z, you could do a custom property for your rotation Z too. And let's choose an angle here as well. That we're going to be rotating by. I'm going to use 15 degrees because it's enough that you can really see it. Maybe it's a little bit too much, but anyway, we'll play with that number a little bit so you can see what's happening. I'm going to try 500 pixels here. Perspective, I find you just have to play around with it until you find one that works well. And let's start both of these at 0, and we'll see how this is all going to work in a second. But what we'll do is we'll come here, and aspect ratio, just in case you're wondering why it's white, is it's relatively new, and I think CodePen's just like, but it does work as we saw. So down here, what we'll do is set up a transform. And this is what transform is one of those things that you have to put, we're going to be using a lot of different transforms. And then if ever you want to do a transition or an animation on a transform, you might have something like your perspective that's not changing, but you have to declare it again, because then if you don't redeclare it, then it just mucks the whole thing up because it assumes you don't actually want that there and it takes it away basically. So by using custom properties, it's sort of like creating shorthands that don't exist, which is super handy. So here, what we're going to do is use all of these custom properties. So the first one we're going to do is a perspective. So perspective, which, let's do it like this. And then just because it is easier to read when it doesn't have custom properties in here. And let's put these each on their own line. So we're going to have a perspective. We're going to have a rotate of X. We're going to have our rotate of Y, and we're going to, I think that's it. I was going to say Z, but we don't need the Z. And I'll start with let's do 20 degrees here, 20 degree, and I'll do a 20 degree here, just so we can actually see what this does. And you see, like our grid is still there, but if you look in the background, you can actually see the card has changed. Let's make these a lot bigger so we can see it a bit more. So see how it's like, there we go. It makes it pretty obvious, I think. And you know what? Well, I was going to do this after, but it's going to make it easier to see what's happening. So on the content here, let's just come right here. Let's add a background image. And I have one here on my clipboard that I can just put in. So we have our image that's in there. It just makes it a bit easier to see what's happening with that tilting going on. But now the idea is, I said, we don't want to have to redeclare this each one of these every single time, because sometimes we're only going to be changing the rotate or the one of the two rotates, and we're never going to be changing the perspective. So this just makes it easier than redeclaring things over and over again. Let's take this, and that was just my var perspective. And then here we can do my var rotate X, and then my var rotate Y. And nothing's happening. But again, if we come up to here and I change this to 50 degrees, we should see it tilt. Of course, we're not seeing it. Rotation, whoops, I did rotation. We're gonna do rotate. I think rotate makes more sense. Aha, there we go. Perfect. So that's working. So we can drop this back down to 0 now. And yeah, let's add in a little bit of our magic. So I'll do this right here, just so we don't have to scroll up and down as much. And this is a little bit manual. Mouse position, tracker, nth child, 1. So the idea is now when we hover on top of that, so I guess we should add our hover here, we don't want this to actually change. We want this to change. So how can we do that? Well, this is why the ordering of things here is really important. And until we have the has selector having better support, we need these to come first, and then we need this to come after. And this needs to be its own thing sort of apart. We need the wrapper, we need all of these, and then we need the content. As I said, we'll look at how has will clean this all up in a little bit, but let's get it working first. So to be able to do that, we want to say when we hover here, we want a sibling. So we can do that with the tilde. And we called that my card content tilting content, whatever. Let's just copy paste it, tilting card content. And just to show you that it's working, let's say that, or make sure it's working, I say, background red, important. So if I come on these, nothing should happen. But if I get to this top corner, oh, nope, oh, it's not working. I think we ran into another problem right now, actually, where let's come on to these guys and say that they have a mouse position tracker. We'll do a Z index 2 just to bring them, make sure they're in front. That worked. Okay, perfect. So they were just hiding behind before. And they're going to be completely transparent and invisible after, so the Z index won't have any effect on anything. So there we go. We can see that that's actually working. So obviously we don't want to do that. What we want to do is change our custom property. So we can say that our rotate X is now going to be 15 degrees, and our rotate Y is also going to be 15 degrees. One of these or both might be negative, but let's go look. So this one I think should be a negative. Let's find out. There we go. So when we do that, it tilts that way. So now what do we need to do? Well, obviously it doesn't look good that it's jumping. So let's come up to where we set up our transform, and we can also say that we want to do an transition of transform, and we'll say like, I don't know, 200 milliseconds ease, maybe 200's a bit. We'll do 350. I don't know. You could play around with the numbers. And even this could be another custom property, I guess, if you want to make things a bit easier. But there, that looks a little bit nicer, right? So it tilts in. Now we just need to do that for each one of the next ones. So we'll fast forward a little bit, but just really fast, we can just go a 2 here. Now 2, we don't want it to rotate side to side. We only want it to rotate up and down. So I can take this one off, and now we should get that one going that way. And look at that, perfect. And then let's just do this last one. So copy that, make this a 3, and then this one will go to a negative 15 that way. And we also want to get the, oh no, whoops, not true. We want both of them to be positive in this case. So that way, that way, that way. And so if we come on, we move over, overall, I think it looks pretty good. And so let's just, I'm going to sort of fast forward this a little bit as I bring in the rest of these, because it's a little boring watching me update these, and we'll see you in just 1 second. All right, so I finished bringing all of these in, and as I was doing it, I realized I put 15 degrees here. It does make it a little bit more readable because we did make a custom property for these as well. So we're going to look at how we can sort of fix that in a second. But you can see, look, it's working and it's going everywhere. So it just takes a bit of time to set it all up. So let's just really fast why I like having these as a custom property instead, and how we can do it because we have negatives here. So the easiest way to do it, and again, if we go look, we had the custom property of angle. So I can just come here and say var angle. The problem is the negative ones here. So for those, we just need to put it in a calc, var angle times -1. And it does make it a little bit harder to read 100%, but the idea is we shouldn't have to worry about any of these anymore. Everything is being controlled purely through this. So I'm not too concerned that this is less readable because it makes the whole thing a little bit better, and you can see it's still working perfectly fine. So anywhere there's a positive number, we just use the var angle. So we can select all of those at the same time. I'm in CodePen, so I'm just holding down Control. If you're in VS Code, you can do the same thing, but with Alt. Hold down Alt and select it. And if you're on a Mac, I don't know what the shortcut is, so I do apologize. So here I can just come in with all the ones that are negatives and paste in exactly what I just came up with. And so we paste that there. And now it's working everywhere, but just with the custom property. So let's clean this up a little bit. We can turn off my outline. We can turn off my opacity that's here. We can turn off that green. Actually, I'm going to leave that green thing, but let's turn off the dev tools now so we don't see the grid anymore. Grid off, grid off. There we go. The reason I'm leaving the green thing on is just an important little note. But you can see it's working. Look at that. Super cool. And because we're using the ease, it doesn't look too janky, because if you do this, you can see it's not perfectly following the mouse. So it's a little bit less smooth than maybe if you have something that's perfectly tracking your mouse position with JavaScript. But overall, I think it works pretty well. And of course, I did this with a 9x9 grid, so you could do it with a more like a 16 grid or a 32 or more. It just takes a little bit more time to set everything up in those cases, obviously. But definitely you could, and you could even probably find a way to like loop through and do it with SAS or another preprocessor to set things up even faster. But one thing that is important with this is see how like even if I'm not on the card, it is going to be moving because it is relative to this green box that's on there. and not relative to the card itself. So that is important. Not that I think it's a big deal. I think it's pretty, like, it feels pretty natural when I'm doing all of this. Let's do a couple of things to clean it up, and then we'll jump into the has though. So yeah, with that done, we can turn off that green border that we'd set up there. And then let's come on my card content here, and we're actually going to make a small change. Let's say dot card content tilting card tilt. Can't spell tilting today. Tilting card content. What I want to do is where H1 and P. I could be anything. I only have an H1 and P in there, but this is just a where makes it easy to, or is. This could be is, just as whichever one you want in this case. If you want to know the difference is and where, the only real difference, or the only difference, is where has 0 specificity here, whereas is would add a little bit of specificity. But let's say background is white on those, margin is 0, and maybe padding is 0.25 or something, rem. Just so we can get something like that. Maybe a 0.5 would look a bit better. There we go. And we get something like that. It looks a little bit nicer, I think. Perfect. So that's there. It's all in place. It's working really well, I think. I'm happy with it overall. But as I said, we can make this a little bit cleaner or better, maybe, if we are going to be using some Sass. So let's just do our Sass, the has selector. And so to be able to do that, and what's really cool with this is we don't actually need this wrapper anymore. We can take all of this, if we're going to use has, and we can take it out, delete the wrapper, and have everything on the actual card itself, which I think is just one of being able to simplify the markup like this is pretty cool. We still need to have the position tracker like this, so you still need all of these guys. But we could even simplify things a little bit here by, instead of having them all like that, let's delete all of this. And then in here, we could do div times 9. So you just have, like, you know, you can collapse that away when you're done type of thing. And so it makes life a little bit easier there. And the reason that we can do this with has is because has lets us look at this and at this sort of at the same time. And to be able to get this to work, I am in Chrome right now, so it's Chrome behind a flag. So you'd have to go to your Chrome and go to flags in and I think it's under experimental web features. Maybe it's somewhere else though. So if it's somewhere else, I'll link to how to do it in the description. But if you're in Safari, it's fully supported and should be here eventually in Chrome. I don't know what's happening with Firefox. But what that means is anywhere we were doing these hover things, we can actually do it a little bit differently. So what I'm going to come and do is let's turn off this grid column thing here because we don't need that anymore. And yeah, so we can get rid of this. And I'm actually just going to delete this. You could reset your grid up on here and set the same grid up and get everything working. Just because I have these here, maybe we'll use positioning instead. So here I have that. We're just going to make sure we also have a position of relative because we're going to need it on the card content here. And then here, instead of doing the inset like this, this is a little bit like I mentioned, we can just set a width and a height of 100% divided by 3. So it's taking up the right amount of space. And let's just do an outline on these again. Outline 3 pixels, solid purple, so we can see them. They're probably overlapping each other, so they're right there. And then when we were selecting them all before, here are grid columns. We can't use those anymore. So this is my first, my fourth, my seventh. So we can just say these all have a left of 0. So that should pull them out to the left. This is my second, my fifth, and my eighth. So this would be a left of, we'll just do calc 100% divided by 3. And then here we can just say these all have a right of 0. It looks like they're not working, but I think now what we want to do is come on to these ones. So we'll start. Oh, see, I mucked up my comments here. This is 1 to 3. 1 to 3. So 1 to 3 would be a top of 0. This would be a top. See, things are sort of working. We might have a small mistake along the way, but here we're going to do top of 100% calc 100% divided by 3. And then this one can just be a bottom 0. And let's see why they're all overlapping each other. What did I do wrong? Width, height, that's all okay. What's happening, Kevin? Oh, I know what I'm doing. I did this on the mouse position tracker itself. We don't want it on the tracker. We want it on any div that is inside of there. So that just means all these guys down here, sorry about that, that's because I changed the name. So here, mouse position tracker, div nth of type, and then so we can just copy this and paste it here, and then paste that here. And sorry, I'm all over the place. On this, on the mouse position tracker itself, mouse position tracker, we can do a position absolute, and then an inset of 0, so it covers the whole space. Spell absolute properly. Here where we set these up, once again, we just want to do div like that. So we'll copy that, paste it here, and that should fix everything. So we're back to having the grid like we had before. Now what we want to do is we want to be able to do this type of thing, but we obviously, it's going to be a little bit different. So I'm actually going to take tilting card content and delete it, and delete this, and delete this, and delete this, and that one. We have to do it for all of them. And then what we want to do is we're actually going to come at the beginning of each one of these. So we can do all of this at once. Just again, I'm pushing Control on my keyboard because I'm in CodePen. If I was in VS Code, I'd be holding down Alt. So when we're hovering, we actually want to say dot tilting card content has. And then we're just going to select all of that all the way over and open and close parentheses. So when tilting card content has the mouse thing that's being hovered on, it's going to change the angle that it's actually rotating and everything. So you can see already it's working. It's just not working properly because we don't want the tracker. Once again, we just have to come through and come on all of these. I guess this would have been a lot easier if I didn't change the name and I just left them all alone. But here we just can do our div like that. So yeah, if I hadn't grouped these all, but I just find it's easier if they're grouped like this. But then we get the exact same thing we had before. Now, for me, I really like this a lot more because the markup's a lot cleaner. We don't have to have a wrapper and then the content. Like this could just be tilting card. That's all we need. And then we have a position tracker and everything will work. So for me, I think that I like that idea a lot more. Having this simplified, having the same thing working, but of course, browser support's not completely there yet. But there we go, it's working. And if you like this, or you like the tilting effect, but you also want to see how to do the spinning effect that the person in my Discord had also asked about, I'd looked at doing that in another video a little while ago. So if you'd like to check that out, the video is right here for your viewing pleasure. And with that, I want to thank my enablers of awesome, Jan, Johnny, Lucas, Mr. Dave, Patrick, Simon, and Tim, as well as all my other patrons for their monthly support. And of course, until next time, don't forget to make your corner on the internet just a little bit more awesome.